Alright, so remember the Red Remover vs Cover Orange case study I did almost 2 years ago? That video was mostly about how similar the progression of both of the series was despite there being no overlap in devs. Well, today I bring you a case study on a Flash dev team instead of a game, because just like Cover Orange and Red Remover, they have one defining quality that I find really interesting. Let's get started. So the dev team I want to talk about is Meow Beast. They're an absolute juggernaut when it comes to making Flash games, having made a respectable 12 games, most of which were massive hits on most of the old Flash game sites. We're going to be going through all of their games in chronological order, which is great because the first game they ever made was Money Movers. This is the first of many one-screen two-player puzzle platformers, and it's also one of their best games if you ask me. Money Movers generally seems to be the series Meowbeast always put the most effort into polishing, and that's noticeable because for 2010 you gotta admit this isn't half bad. Both of the guys control really nicely and the level designs are also solid. It's a relatively simple game, it can be 100%ed in like an hour, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it's still a solid first game that shows they got promise as game designers. So, what next? Bob the Robber. I bet you've played this game but didn't know it was made by these guys. To my knowledge at least, Bob the Robber is their biggest hit. Is it their best game? Probably not. My biggest complaint with it would probably be that the movement is very slow and the pacing is pretty bad. A lot of the game is spent in levels 4 and 5 compared to 1, 2, and 3, which is annoying but understandable since you can't really make this gameplay any harder in any other way than making each level longer and longer than the last. Still, I prefer Money Movers. Next up, we got easily the hardest game to find post-Flash's death. Red and Green 1 seems to be the game that Meowbeast doesn't want you to know they made, because after making Red and Green 2, they deleted the first game off of most of the websites it was on and replaced it with a version of Red and Green 2 with the 2 removed from the title, so, you know, that's strange. Outside of a couple YouTube walkthroughs, Red and Green 1 was basically lost media for a while until January 2025 when Pixel finally managed to dig up an SWF for it, so now we can gawk at its wonderfulness. Yeah, I see why they wanted it gone from the internet. This game isn't great. The shooting, which is its main mechanic, is just really unintuitive and dumb. Yeah, not much else to say about it. The levels are designed around the weird shooting, but that doesn't make it tolerable, just less bad. Anyway, next up, Jim Loves Mary. This is just Money Movers again, except with a lighter tone and worse controls. Jim and Mary control way less smoothly, and the difference between the two is just lamer. It's not necessarily a bad game, just a really boring one to talk about because there's nothing interesting about it compared to Money Movers. Let's move on to Red and Green 2. This time it's actually good. The level design and general gameplay loop isn't the best, but it's better than the first game, that's for sure. Once again, not much else to talk about, so what's next? Their last original series. Hello Zombie's like a one-player version of Money Movers and Jim Loves Mary. This one controls a bit better, and it's just because the throwing feels good. That's about it. This is also one of their longest games, but I feel like that's probably because of how ungodly slow it is compared to stuff like Money Movers. Next up, we got Bob the Robber 2. This is the final Flash installment, so I'm only gonna talk about it and none of the ones after it. It's just a bigger version of the first game. I don't feel like talking about Bob the Robber anymore already, so let's move on to Jim Loves Mary 2. I can't really tell whether this is an improvement from Jim Loves Mary 1 or not, because on one hand the physics are actually improved a lot from the first game and it feels a lot better, but on the other hand the level design is a lot worse because it's completable in like a minute max. I don't know really, I'd probably play it over the first, but the first actually had interesting level design going on, so it's a toss-up. Okay, next up, Headless Zombie 2. Once again, a big improvement on the first. The whole robot electricity gimmick is really well executed and it makes for some really interesting levels. I'm not gonna lie, this is their best non-Money Movers game. Speaking of, we only got those left. Money Movers 2 is Meowbeast's best game because they keep the first game's good physics and has slightly better level design. Money Movers 3 is a completely different game from the first one and I find that really funny. I have a feeling Meowbeast made this game only to not know what to do to make it do good numbers-wise, so they just called it Money Movers 3. I don't really care because it's a good game, but yeah. Alright, final two games. Money Movers Maker is exactly what you'd expect it to be. It's what happened if you let any child with an internet connection have access to Mario Maker. It's pure chaos. Also, the level creator's broken, so the only thing you can even do anymore is play user-made levels, and surprise, surprise, they suck. Okay, now, our last game isn't technically a Meowbeast game, but I just want to talk about it. Money Movers 4 is a Chinese knockoff of Money Movers 3 that I managed to dig up from a random website a couple of years ago. It uses a weird loop with the JLM2 theme, looks like ass, and plays like ass. Pretty much exactly what you'd expect. Yeah, that's it. Did you notice how I talked progressively less and less about each game as we went on? Yeah, me too. At some point around late 2013, Miyabi's just got comfortable and started making only sequels to their previous works. It also feels like the only games they actually put effort into were the 3 mainline Money Movers and Headless Zombie 2. Everything else just feels like games for the sake of making games. I guess it's just what happens when a dev team finds their specific niche. Yep, that's it for this video. I don't got nothing else to say. Thanks for watching, goodbye.